Hello, guten Tag und grüß Gott. Today is Saturday, August the 20th, 2022. Wow. So, yes, once again, I did not make a video every week as I had hoped, but here we are. I'm going to make a video today. And I specifically picked something that is kind of caught my attention, and and I want to lead with that, and that is bread. Actually, specifically Wonderbread. So I want to tell you about Wonderbread, and you probably all know about Wonderbread. I've seen it in the grocery stores, and maybe some of you are really great fans of Wonderbread. But that bread, that Wonderbread, is now about 100 years old now. I think it was like in 1921 that it was actually, it came out. And I've been told that the reason Wonderbread came out and why it was called Wonderbread is because our government became concerned about nutrition of its population, specifically vitamins. So this was probably still, people will still remember, the Hong Kong and Asian beriberi issue. And it's probably only been 100 years or so, or maybe less, and maybe in the lifetime of people, in the 1920s that still remember that, hey, the limeys really came onto something because, the sailors' teeth would fall out, because they had no fresh fruit and no vitamin C, and specifically. And of course, the beriberi thing was a B vitamin issue that came along with polished rice, when people wanted polished rice. And well, here's the thing, is that people throughout the ages have been clamoring for white bread. And it wasn't always available. And, I'm sure that, in the Roman times, when they were grinding the bread by hand in mortar and pestle, it was, and had all the stone and grit with it, that caused problems in their teeth. Anyway, white bread must have been hard to come by. But once it emerged, people really wanted white bread. And that was problematic because in order to get white bread, you got to get rid of the bran. And, well, you all know about this. This is it's pretty much common knowledge, what happens, how you have to get white bread. You have to really process the grain, in order to get white bread. And, personally, I've never been a fan of white bread. But Wonderbread. Now, what's amazing about the breads today, for instance, I've bought some bread here. This is called, now you notice that I've probably used it already. It's called, Wholesome Harvest Country White Bread, okay? Wholesome, and it's white bread, and it's Wholesome Harvest. Well, that's how it is. Now, more of the Wholesome Harvest, I was kind of suspicious about this white bread, so I bought 100% stone ground whole wheat bread. You see, 100% stone ground whole wheat bread. And then I began to compare, the vitamin contents and the stuff in there, and I've discovered something actually some time ago, but I just had to bring it out now, is that Wonderbread is really something. So if you look at the nutritional contents of, for instance, this Wholesome white bread, and I'm kind of going to read it to you. Each slice is 110 calories. Well, that's pretty normal. And it has 2 grams of fat, which is 3%. Then it has 9% sodium. Okay, now that's of your daily allowable amount, or not necessarily allowable amount, but, of your daily nutritional value. And then it has 7% carbohydrate, dietary fiber 4%. Now that's a good thing, dietary fiber. And then sugar's 3%, and vitamin D 0, calcium 4%, which is not bad, iron 6%, 1.1, and potassium 2%. That's it. That's the vitamin content of this wholesome country white bread. So that obviously was added to the bread because it couldn't have just been the wholesome grain, that was white. We didn't grow white grain. Grain without bran, that is. So now let's take a look at the Wholesome Harvest 100% stone ground. Okay. 100% stone ground, that's kind of interesting because, I want to make sure I put my glasses on and read this properly. 100% stone ground, whole wheat. It has 100 calories per slice. Okay, so, you're getting 10 calories less. And total fats are 2%, so that's a percentage less than the white bread, so it has less fat. It has 9% sodium, like the other one, 6% carbohydrate, and so that's 1% less carbohydrate. This is interesting. Total dietary fiber, though, is 11%. So, yes, the brand does make a difference. And you get more fiber, and fiber is a good thing because, it helps the transportation system, as you well know. But then you go to vitamin D0, calcium 4%, same as the other bread, iron 6%, same as the other bread, and potassium 2%. So these breads here, whether it's white or whole grain, whole wheat, stone ground, well, they're about the same in terms of nutritional content. And let me look and see whether the price. Well, the price is the same, and bread right now is $4.99, so that's $5 a loaf. We used to buy bread for a lot less than that. Now let's look at Wonderbread, okay? And look at the nutritional content. Holy crap. First of all, per slice, it's 140 calories. So there are more calories in there. In terms of fat, total fats, it's 1% less. So it's got less fat. No trans fat, of course. Sodium 8%, so that's less sodium also. Total carbs are 11%, and that's a little bit higher. Dietary fibers, 10%, that's right in there. Sugars are 5 grams, and let's see, what were the sugars in the other one? 3 grams. So it's got a little more sugar. And but then when you go to the vitamins, for instance, vitamin D, 20%, calcium 35%, iron 10%, potassium 0, which is interesting. Thiamine 40%, riboflavin 15%, niacin 15%, and folate 25%. Now, folate is really important. If I'm not mistaken, it's important for pregnancy, for pregnant women, and they have to have folate in their diet in order to have a shot at healthy children. Anyway, so here you are, with the Wonderbread. No wonder it's a Wonderbread, right? The nation's government was interested and was concerned about nutrition because people were clamoring for white bread. And so they gave them white bread that was nutritious. And they called it Wonderbread. And it's still around. So don't be afraid to eat Wonderbread. It's as good, and if not better, than this wholesome stuff, So, okay, but, I I really like my special bread because, I'm from Germany, and we're used to eating some really rough stuff, and I just want to show you this. This is the bread that is my favorite bread, and it's called Kommissbrot. And Kommissbrot is actually army bread. Okay, so this is what supposedly the German armies were fed, and I'll show you a slice of this. It kind of looks like this, It's kind of a rough piece, but darn, I love it, Now compare that to a slice of Wonder Bread. It's just a totally different thing. And totally different kind of. So, I mean, when I came to America, I thought this was cake. Okay, now you can understand why one thought that, eating this kind of stuff, and then getting this, one would think that that was cake. So, in any case, that's the kind of bread that I like, and so I encourage you to Google Wonderbread because it's a Wonder Bread. It's really good for you. So, white bread has been lambasted by, all of the health gurus, but unfortunately, this bread here, which I bought at the Euro market, they don't give a shit about what the nutritional content is, that is too expensive, but this was also $5.50, so it was a little more expensive. Another thing I want to point out to you, see this date up here? It says April 23rd. So I froze this loaf to begin with, and this is what I typically do with this kind of bread. I freeze it when I buy it fresh, and then I put it in the refrigerator, and from the refrigerator, then I eat it. So I've been eating on this bread, I don't, probably for a month or so, but it's been frozen, and I've had it in the house in my refrigerator, freezer, since April 23rd. Wow. Anyway, so much for the bread, but I just wanted to share this with you because, I just find it fascinating. And who doesn't like bread? I mean, for instance, just recently in the news, we had women in Afghanistan were protesting, and so there was a group of 40-some women in Kabul evidently protesting, and what they shouted was bread, education, and freedom. Well, well, this is not funny, actually. Maybe I shouldn't have laughed, but so the Taliban, came with armed people, they were shooting their guns off over their head, took their cell phones away, and said, get the hell home, and dispersed the crowd. So much for protests. Now, of course, we're here in America. We can have a 1 million woman march, right? And I'm not sure, what are they protesting again, the women? Equal pay, maybe, that kind of thing. Well, I would say that, equal work needs equal pay. The question is, how do you determine the equal work and so on? So it's a bit of a sticky wicket, that business has to deal with. But hey, equal effort and equal results should be rewarded equally. I mean, there's just no question about it. But I think the women were also just pissed off at Trump and, that the Republicans, won the presidency, and I don't know what else they were pissed off about, but there are 1 million pissed women out there, and shouting obscenities, and wearing pussy hats, and, it's just, I didn't see any bra burning this time. I guess that's, they figured out it's a good thing to have something to hold them up, so, yeah, okay. So much for protests, in Afghanistan. And it's kind of peculiar because President Xi sent a Chinese delegation to the Taliban, and the Chinese news reported, how much more secure Afghanistan is nowadays than it was, because they just celebrated their first anniversary of freedom, when President Biden decided to do one of those Saigon exits. And, so now they have their country back, and nothing has changed, from what, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and the women are being enslaved again, basically, because, now Sharia law pervades, and, it's subject to the interpretation of the people, the government, as to what Sharia law really means, because it's implemented throughout the Middle East in different forms and different ways, and For instance, Saudi Arabia just there was a woman that was protesting on Twitter uh, about the freedom of the women in Saudi Arabia. And so she decided to go home and visit her family. Well, they promptly arrested her, and now she's, I think they sentenced her to like, I don't know, 40 years of hard labor or whatever. It's just, damn. Anyway, more a little bit on Islam, because Salman Rushdie was stabbed. And Salman Rushdie is the one that wrote the satanic verses, and I'm sure that's regular college reading nowadays. Or it's probably banned in colleges because it's anti-Islam. Anyway, but I have no idea. So don't take my word on the satanic verses. But I used to have a copy of it. And I can't remember, I don't think it was really interesting reading. But now that Salman Rushdie's been stabbed and he's recovering in the hospital, but I think he was stabbed something like 17 times or something. This Muslim extremist, went after it. And interestingly, the Iranian newspapers and the government said, well, you can't blame the people that did the stabbing. He was to blame himself. He is the one that brought that upon him, which is an interesting take, and from my perspective, just totally idiotic. Okay, that's just of course, the cause of something like this, has multifaceted, but that does not give anybody the right to go and stab somebody. It's kind of like Zelensky in the Ukraine saying, hey, maybe we want to join NATO, and then Putin goes and invades them. I mean, what the hell, right? Anyway, let's see what else happened in the news, because after all, this is Newswit, right? Let's see, the U.S. killed Alzawahri, which was one of the AlQueda leaders. And evidently had something to do with 9/11, and it's been on our radar for a long time. But it's interesting how they killed him. They killed him with a drone strike. And that drone strike was so surgical that they only killed him in the building that he was in, and the building wasn't destroyed other than, wherever the drone missile had to go in. And it killed him, and his family is okay. So in other words, they did not just knock down that building and turn it into rubble to get him. So, you got to wonder. Should we carry out assassinations, as a democracy, or, as the example of the world, for the world, how a government is supposed to act? We're criticizing the Chinese for their humanitarian processes, humanitarian stance. We criticize the Russians, for the starting the war, and we criticize regimes all over the world, and yet we decide that My question, I guess, would be, and I'm not going to pursue this any further, but was Alzawahri found guilty by some sort of a world court? Now, I can understand that, if somebody is declared a threat to humanity by a world court, and the evidence has been brought forward and so forth, then in the old days in Germany, they had a process for that, and they called it vogelfrei. And as a matter of fact, Martin Luther was declared vogelfrei, which meant that, hey, the king and the judiciary of the time decided that this guy needs to die, and well, he wasn't available, so you can't hang him or anything like this. But if anybody finds him someplace and kills him, then that's a good thing, okay? So it was publicized, and that's why Luther had to go into hiding. And that's why we had the translation of the Latin Bible into German, because that's what he did. He disguised himself. One of the minor lords actually gave him refuge, and he was called Junker Johannes, which is okay, And so nobody knew that it was actually Luther, because people took that serious. There was a criminal out there, according to the king or the Kaiser, and it was okay to kill him because nobody wanted criminals around. So if somebody was declared vogelfrei, which means, if you'd want to translate that into English, is free as a bird. So I guess, birds can be killed and so on. Then people would take that seriously, and actually, if anybody knew his whereabouts, they would then kill him, and the guy would become a hero. I don't think there was any reward or bounty out at that time, but it was very similar to bounty hunter, except he could be hunted by anybody. It wasn't some sort of a registered bounty hunter. Yeah, so that's what happened. And President Biden got COVID twice, but he was vaccinated, and the medicines and so forth. And he went in front of TV and he said, "Hey, the last president that got COVID, they had to go to the hospital and have special treatment. And even though he was okay, but he was seriously ill. And look at me." I've got a cough, and, I can infect somebody else with COVID. So, he isolated, but then he got it again. But he's fine, okay? And he is in his 70s. I don't know exactly how old he is, but he's in his 70s something. Also, Liz Cheney, who is the Republican representative from Wyoming, didn't make it into the primary, was really trounced, because she was really took an anti-Trump stance. And the Republican Party, is kind of stuck together. And, of course, maybe they're not so much pro-Trump, as much as they are anti-Biden and Kamala Harris and so on, so she was part of the January 6th committee, and I think she still is part of that, but she won't be running for another term in Congress. However, she hinted at maybe running for the presidency because she's got a really big hate-on for Trump. So let's see what else happened. Well, talking about Trump, his place in Mar-a-Lago was raided by the FBI. I think it was raided twice even, and they took a total of 15 boxes of documents. And now the contention is who authorized a raid on the president's domicile? Now, the documents that he took were evidently classified documents. And maybe he needed to go through them because they were his documents. They were not somebody else's. I guess they're the nation's documents because if they're classified. But, they're always for the eyes of the president. So the president could look at them and see whether there's anything in there historical, that he can have for the future, for his future library or whatever he may think about building. But somebody inside of his organization evidently tipped off the FBI that these are the classified documents that are still in his possession, because he turned some of them over that evidently had been reviewed and, were not needed, or copies weren't needed, or maybe they just hand copied some things, whatever. But, he's clearly interested in preserving some of his history, not necessarily the documents, but at least some of that information. Because, the opposition party will always try to twist and lie things and lie about things and so forth, So, I could see why the facts, should be held by somebody. And of course, where are they held? Well, in the National Archives, and so they would actually be available at some time, because in 70 years or so you can open them up. So we'll know who actually killed Kennedy, right? So yeah, that's a big deal right now. And also, Germany decided, Angela Merkel decided that after Fukushima, that all of the nukes should be shut down, because, hey, we're just too stupid to operate nukes. It's too dangerous, and so forth. So she started shutting down, Germany started shutting down their nukes. But there are 3 nukes still running. And they decided, maybe not, because, Russia is mucking with a gas pipeline and so forth, so a lot of energy is being bought from Russia, and now we have that conflict because Germany is part of NATO, and of course they have to stick with NATO, and it's against Russia. And it's really a mess, because Russia is also demanding that payment be in rubles, so that I guess that supports their ruble, because you have to get them, and give somebody some money for the rubles, and then you pay in rubles. So it's complicated, and so the Germans decided, well, let's wait a little bit, with shutting down the nukes. And from my perspective, I think the nukes, especially with some of the advancements in fusion technology and so forth, I think that's probably the cleanest power available to us. Of course, accidents, a disaster. And right now, there is a nuclear plant in the Ukraine, and it's not Chernobyl, but it's some other nuclear plant that from time to time missiles hit it. And so, a lot of people are worried about it, because it goes back and forth, evidently between the Russians and the Ukrainians. They take it and they take it. And so it's a bit of a mess. And you know what? I find that in the news, there's a lot of reporting that says, the Russians are losing this and they're losing that. And, their ammo depots are being blown up in the Crimean and so forth. And that's probably all true. But, the damage, if you look at the total in the news cycle in the last few weeks, it just, and actually in the last few months, it always talks about how the Russians are getting clobbered, and a lot of YouTubers, they're saying, hey, they're running out of people, they're running out of ammo, they're running out of stuff. But I tell you something, is the Russians are really smart people. Okay, they won the eastern part of World War II. And the way they did that is not with superior equipment and Tiger tanks and so forth, although the T-24s and T-40s or T-44s were also quite good. And I'm not sure that, I know there was a tank after the T-24, but the T-24 is the one I always heard about when I was a kid. And then they had the Stalin organ, which was artillery that the Germans really hated, because it would fire, a rocket every, I don't know, a split second, and it would sound like, somebody playing an organ in a church, except, it rained down destruction on you. So I'm not so sure that the Russians are actually out of anything, because if they were actually out of something, the Chinese would come to their aid. And now they're making an alliance with North Korea. And that's not much of an alliance, because how can North Korea help them? They can hardly feed their people right now. But, it's just another thing, a stick in the face of the West, and the West dominated by America. So, yeah. We believe we're right, and Putin believes he's right. My opinion is, I think we're more right, than somebody that just invades a fucking country, okay? So that's just not the right thing to do. So let's see, what else we got going on? well, that's, pretty much it. Except the other day I was riding someplace with my wife, and I saw a window lettering in the back of a car. And it said, I like big books and I don't lie. And so, I puzzled over this, and I thought, is there a guy that's trying to say, I like big butts, or no, I like big boobs, and I don't lie? That's what went through my mind, and so I asked my wife, I said, hey, what do you make of this phrase there? Because we were behind that car, and, it was in our face all the time. And she says, well, there is a song called I Like Big Butts and I Don't Lie. I didn't know that, but, my wife's wily when it comes to songs and pop culture and that kind of thing. She's really on top of it. And so, yeah, because, when I saw the driver, it was a woman, it wouldn't have talked about boobs, but it was, so my wife says, well, she's probably a librarian, I like big books and I don't lie. So it was a takeoff, and a reference to that song. Anyway, well, we've gone over 30 minutes, and I try to really keep these videos to 30 minutes. And I hope that I've entertained you some. And with that, I will bid you farewell. So long, auf Wiedersehen. And we must infect the universe with us.